morning. We're going to begin Masechus Zevachim and Seder Kudshim today.
I will say, I looked up, I just checked yesterday that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is the son of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. So
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
his son was Shimon, so it made sense. His son Shimon was named after his
Oh,
father.
of course, yes, very good, thank you. Okay, Kol Zevachim shel nizbechu shlo lishma. Any offering that is slaughtered lo lishma, meaning not as a with the intention of not being for itself, for its own name. In other words, what this means is for its specific type of offering. So you have all these different kinds of offerings, chatas, shlamim, asham, etc. And if you have a chatas, and you think that, and you when you're slaughtering it, you're intending to use it for something else, then it's no good. Puzzle. I'm sorry, ksherim. Ella shalo al balim l'shem chavad. Not that it's puzzle. Sorry, that it is. It works. Like if you do it as an ola, then it's an ola. But the people, the owner who is supposed to bring a chatas has not fulfilled his obligation to bring a chatas because it's no longer a chatas, right? You take an animal, the owner wants it to be a chatas, you make it an ola. You think you're doing it as an ola, so it's an ola, and the owner still has to bring his chatas. He hasn't. He's not off the hook yet. Chutz min haPesach ve'achatas. The only exception is a Pesach and a chatas. So I used the wrong example. Sorry. These two things, if they are slaughtered for a different purpose, then they are actually pasul. HaPesach bismano, v'achatas b'chol zman. Pesach is if it's done. So Pesach is a subcategory of shlamim, right? So if you have your carbon Pesach and 2 days before Pesach you slaughter it as a shlamim, well, that's not a Pesach because it's not on the 14th of Nisan. The 14th of Nisan is the only time you can bring a Pesach. What we're talking about is if on the 14th of Nisan, we'll discuss morning, afternoon, if on the 14th of Nisan you take your Pesach and you slaughter it as something else, then it's invalidated.
It becomes a shlamim, doesn't it? Didn't we learn that Psachim that if he slaughters it, that he thought, how does it go? That we thought it was he didn't slaughter as a Pesach, it becomes a shlamim? Is there something like that?
So a Pesach is indeed a subcategory of a shlamim. Let's finish the mission. We'll see some different views on this. The chatas, if it doesn't have a particular time, so if you take a chatas and you slaughter it as something else, then it's possible anytime. Rav Lazar Amar Afa Asham. Rav Lazar includes the Asham in this. HaPesach bismano, v'chatas v'asham b'chol zman. Amar Rav Lazar. Achatas ba'al why is this? Because a chatas comes to atone for a sin. Ba'asham ba'al achet, and asham also comes for a sin. Achatas psula shlo lishmo, asham pasul shlo lishmo. So they have the same rule that if they are slaughtered for the wrong purpose, then they are pasul. Rabbi Yossi ben Chaloni Omer hanishchatim l'shem pesach or l'shem chatos psulim. If you have another sacrifice, and you think that when you're doing it that it's a Pesach or a Chatas, then that is also possible. Shimon Achia Omer, Shimon the brother of Azariah says, Shchatan l'shem gavoa mehen ksherin. Now, there's a difference how you're making the error here. So there's a hierarchy of kedusha, of sanctity, in all these sacrifices, right? There's kadshe kadshim and kadshe kalim. If you say the paragraphs early in the morning davening that lays out all of the different categories, right? And even within those categories, even within kadshe kadshim, there's like higher ones and lower, higher degree of kedusha and lower degrees of kedusha. So, if you are going up the ladder, right, you take kachim kalim and you sacrifice that, you slaughter them for the purpose of kadshe kachim, then ksherim, that's okay. So they qualify as something that's more kadosh. But if you go down the ladder, then you're invalidating it. Ketzad, for example, if you have the kache kachim, which are the higher degree of sanctity, and you think that when you're doing the shechita that it's for kachim kalim, psulim, that's no good. Kachim kam sheshchadon l'shem kachi kachim. If you go up the ladder, ksherim. And now within those categories, habachor v'maser sheshchadon l'shem shlavim. So what are kachim kalim? Are bachor, maser, pesach, and shlamim? So if you take a bechor or a maser offering and you slaughter it as a shlamim, ksherim, that is going up the ladder. That's more kadosh. A shlamim, even within the category of kashim kalim, is more kadosh than the bechor and the maser. Shlamim sheshladim l'shem bechor l'shem maser. You go the other way, psulim. So first the Gemara asks, Lama elu misna el shelo alu? Why does it have to? Why does it use the word ella? But, right? It's kasher, but it doesn't, according to the Tanakhama, but it doesn't fulfill the owner's obligation. Why the word but? Hakamashmalan, what it teaches you is lebalim who lost l'shem chava, that it's only for the owners that the obligation is not fulfilled. Ava b'kedushayu kaime, but they still remain kadosh as they were before. V'aser l'shanu yebuhu, and you can't make any further changes to it. So in other words, even though it's now let's say an ola, you still do the avoda as if it were the original thing, the shlamim, let's say.
Well, why? No, how could that? Because the shlamim is given. People eat from the shlamim. But if it's an ola, it's burned totally on the mizbeach, right?
Right.
So how could that an ola then be used as a shlamim?
Okay, good question. What the Gemara is talking about is the avoda itself, right? Like how you do the sprinkling of the blood, where you burn it, that kind of thing. So whether you do smicha, what kind of nesachim you use, all these other details. As far as eating it is concerned, that's a good question. Didn't consider that. Yeah, I don't know. It implies that the eating would be the same in the case of if it's originally a shlamim, something that can be eaten.
But if he treats it as an ola, it's totally burned. There's nothing left to eat.
Okay, good point. So, all right. So let's say, so maybe shlamim was a poor example. Yeah, I mean the Gemara doesn't make any distinctions. Like treat it the rest of the way. Treat it as its original thing. Rava, and this is supported by Rava. Diyama Rava, Ola sheshchata shlo. If you take an Ola and you do the shchita not for an Ola, Asr lizrok dam al shlo lishma. You can't do the sprinkling of the blood. Again, not as an Ola. You have to do it as an Ola. Or you could say it's not relying on Rava, it's like logical. Oh no, why? Sorry, what is the source of Rava's statement? Could be logical or could be from a pasuk. What's the logic? Like, what would be your reason? Like, you have here whatever the original was. Let's stay away from Shani. Let's say it's a I don't want to say chatas. Chatas is an exception.
A toda? Could you say a toda?
That's one of the kind of a shlamim as well. Well, here we're talking about an ola, right? So it's an ola, and you do it as something else. Then just because you messed it up once, should you continue messing it up? Keep treating it as an ola. Just that kol hani l'shabal l'lezel. So is that a reason to not to mess up the other parts of the avoda? Or you could say it's a pasuk. Hi in the dava, like So the pasuk says you should do whatever you say. You should keep your word. Whatever you vow to God as a um, as a uh, as in Nadava, as a gift, Kasher Divarta B'ficha, as you spoke. So, hi Nadava, is this promise a Nadava? Nether, right? Kasher Nadarta Lashem L'Kecha Nadava. Nether and Nadava are two different things, right? A nether is when you say, I'm going to bring a carbon, and a Nadava is when you say, I'm going to bring this animal as a carbon. Um, so why does this pasuk mix them together? Ella, so what is it telling us? Im kamashin adarta sisa yehineder. If you did what you promised, right? In other words, you did the shchita lishma, then fine. Vim lo, but if not nedava yehe, so then it will be treated as a nedava. Unedava mishari l'shanuyaba. Now you can't make any change with a nedava. The Gemara will tell us later on that um, in other words, since a carbon that is done that is sacrificed shalol lishma is considered a nedava, then um, it still fulfills the nether, right? So even though you've changed it, it still fulfills the nether, or it's still to be treated as the nether. In other words, this pasuk is telling us still continue with it as if it's a nether, even though you've changed it to a nedava. Okay, it's a little
What
bit
is
of
the nether
tortured
here?
logic. No, nether is in general. If you make a nether and then you mess it up into a nadava, then it's still treated as a nether. It's still considered the original nether, or in terms of how you treat it, how you proceed with it. It's a little, it's the logic escapes me a little bit, but this isn't logic. This is interpreting the pasuk, but can kind of see what they're getting at.
But we're talking about a korban here.
Yeah, yeah, for
It could be
sure.
a
Yeah.
nether, and person can make a nether that's nothing to do with a korban, right?
Well, yeah, but technically, what the Torah, what the Gemara understands this pasuk to be talking about is a nether of a korban. Yeah, you can make a nether when we use it colloquially now. You want to give money, or you want to make some kind of other, behavioral promise.
Right. I'm not going to eat
But
this, so
the
I'm not going
Right, right, right. So that is
to.
true in I mean the Torah talks about that as well, right? In the parsha, beginning of Parsha Matos, it's talking about any kind of neder to any kind of behavior. But in this pasuk, Moses Lasacha Tishmar Yasisa Kasher Nadarta Lashem Elokecha Nedava, this the Gemara understands in this narrow sense is talking about a korban. So, we'll take that for granted. I mean, does that pasuk also mean that you should keep your word whatever kind of neder you make? Probably does, right? But here the Gemara is talking technically that it's deriving, what is this pasuk teaching us? It's teaching of us about karbanos.
But can a person make a nether for a chatat? I mean,
No,
isn't it? No,
no,
I
you
didn't think
can't.
so. No, I didn't think so. So this wouldn't apply to bringing a korban as a chatat, and now it becomes a an ola, for instance.
Okay, so what the principle here that the Gemara is deriving is if you have something that's a nether and you change it, improperly to a nadava, keep treating it as a nether. In other words, and that's the principle, and then we can apply that principle to whatever, to chatas, to any other kind of change in a korban.
Uh-huh.
Only Ravina Rafapa. Lo heavy's gaban biurta. You weren't there last night in the shir. B'tchuma bechermach. In the tchum, in the whatever the district of Bechermach, the place. Um, Too bad you weren't in the shir. Terami Rava Mile Mal Yasa Hadade, because Rava asked some really good questions. Vishanilhu, he raised some good questions, some contradictions, and he answered them. My Mila Malia. So what are these? What were brilliant um, uh, contradictions? It's not. We have a Mishnah. Kol hazvachim shenizbechu shelo lishman. Our Mishnah, right? If you do the slaughtering for a different purpose, it's kosher, but they don't count. Tama de Shalom Lishman. So the reason that the Mishnah gives is that it's done Shalom Lishman, not for the sake Hastama. But what if you aren't thinking anything, right? Your mind is wandering. You're doing the shechita, and so you don't do it l'shem whatever carbon it is, but you don't do it l'shem something else either. So it implies by saying by the Mishnah saying that it's Shalom Lishman, that you do it for the wrong purpose. So a null purpose, an absent purpose, that would count for the as the original carbon.
Don't we
Almost not.
talk about something called pigol, where if someone has the wrong intention,
Yeah.
would that apply if he doesn't have intention here?
No, that's it. Wait a minute. What are you asking?
I'm asking if there's a concept of pigol here.
Well, pigul is a specific type of wrong intention that you're planning to eat it outside of its proper time or place. Okay,
So here we're talking.
so I think Pegel certainly a null, absence of intention, is probably fine,
Uh-huh.
unless you think that you have to specifically intend, all the details of the carbon. I don't think that's necessarily the case. Um, so, but what we're talking about is if you do the shechita without any intention at all. So, our Mishnah doesn't seem to include that as a problem. Right? So we'll derive that it's not a problem, that even though you weren't thinking, Ola at the time, it's still an Ola. Or, well, there's no Balim there, Chatas. Even though you weren't thinking Chatas at the time, you weren't thinking anything else either, so it's fine for it counts for the Chatas. Almastamaname Kilishmandame. So we see that, absence of attention is fine. Or minhu, but here's the contradiction. Kol haget, so we're going to compare this to the case of a
Sorry,
get,
I'm
a
sorry, but
divorce.
why are we bringing? Why is he bringing a carbon just to eat it? I mean, he has no intention at all.
No,
So
don't forget who's doing the shechita. It's not necessarily the owner; it's the Kohen. Right? But even if it is the owner, you sometimes do things absently, like without thinking about it as rote, right? Like you're distracted, you're thinking about something else, right? So what Rava is saying here is that the Mishnah implies that if you're not thinking chatas 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 when you're doing the shechita, or maybe some you will see later, maybe you have to actually verbalize it, but if you're not doing that, then that's not a problem.
so he
The only
originally
problem is
brought it as a chata. He knew he was bringing it. He wasn't bringing an animal.
when you're
Bring an
right.
animal,
So
right?
you pick out the animal as a chatas, you bring it to the base of mikdash
Okay,
as a
all right.
chatas. You're thinking after the chatas, and then when it comes to the shechita, you're thinking about the stock market.
Oh, okay, all right, okay.
Okay. Um, or minhu, but what's the contradiction? From a case of divorce. Kol haget shenichtav shelo l'shem isha pasul. So we'll get to a minute whether this is a valid comparison. But a get, if you do a divorce, and you do it, you just write a divorce without a specific woman in mind. That's no good, right? There's a lot of people in your community named Chayamushka. Okay, and you're the sofer, and you're like, I think there are going to be a lot of divorces. Or I've got time now to write to write Gita in case someone needs it, so I'm going to write the get. Okay, but there isn't a specific person who's requested the get or who this is for, so that is no good. Ustama name puzzle. So that teaches us that if without any intention, it's puzzle. So why would you say differently about the sacrifice? V'shani, and this is how Rava answered it. Zevachim bistam lishman omdim. That when you have a sacrifice, even when you're not thinking about something specific, it's and this is maybe what you were kind of alluding to, Ken. Um, the whole context here is that you're in the Beis Hamikdash, you brought this animal, there's kind of, you assume that there's some subconscious intention to bring it as the korban. Isha b'sama lav l'gerushin amadas. But when you're talking about divorce, it's like, what makes you think people are going to get divorced, right? That there's no, you have no necessarily, there's no context in which this would be valid. So Uzvachim b'stomach sharing minal. Now, where do we get this idea that, how do you know that that a slaughtering without specific intention is okay. Is it makes the that it's still kosher. Elay Mame Hadisnan, maybe it's from the Mishnah. Calls Vashon Lishman. Now we started out Rava saying that he implied from our Mishnah that since the Mishnah says when is it no good as the sacrifice that it was supposed to be for when you had a negative intention, right? A specific intention for something else. And it doesn't say not Shalol Lishman, but that we're not that did not have the correct positive intention. So gabi get nami hakatani, but that might be the case for a get also. Kol get shenichtav shelo l'shem isha apostle. So parallelly, if get were the same, it should have said kol get shenichtav l'shem velokatani. It should have said shelo nichtav l'shem isha. So by the order of the words should be the same if they're parallel cases, right? So like why do you think that they're parallel? So we have a Elmi Hadithan, we have a different source that the absence of any of the absence of intent is enough. Elmi Hadithan, we have this source. Kesa Lishma Mishlo Lishma, another Mishnah. What does it mean, lishma and not lishma? What does this even mean? L'shem Pesach or l'shem shlamim? If it was a sacrifice that began as a Pesach or a shlamim, so Tama di Amar l'shem Pesach or l'shem shlamim, l'shem Pesach ustama kasher. Oh, so sorry. What is the? Sorry, this is not talking about the difference. The another Mishnah will tell us that it's both lishma and l'shem something else, right? So, for example, a Pesach, as we mentioned, is a subcategory of shlamim. So when you're slaughtering it, you're thinking both of Pesach and shlamim. So Talmud Yom l'shem Pesach l'shem shlamim. So that has to be a positive intention. L'shem Pesach ustama kasher. If you if you okay, I misstate it again. It's when you start the shechita with one and you finish the shechita with the other. Okay, so l'shem Pesach stama kasher. So since the Mishnah specifies you start with thinking about Pesach and you end thinking about shlamim, but that excludes the case where you start thinking about Pesach and then you start thinking about the stock market. Okay, so maybe that implies almost daman kil shman dami. So maybe that is the source of Rava's assertion that we have one source that lo lishma or absence of intention is okay. So Gemara said, well, not necessarily. Dilma shani hasam diamar kol ha'osa al das rishon hu osa. Well, there you've at least begun with the Pesach. So you started thinking about the shlamim, about the stock market. Like, so what? You started doing the shechita thinking about Pesach. So maybe that's good enough, right? But it doesn't tell you that if you started in general, like you did the whole act of shechita thinking about the stock market, that doesn't shed any light on that case. Elamami Seifa, maybe from the end of that Mishnah. Shalol Lishma v'Lishma. If you start out Lo Lishma, and then you complete it Lishma, then what is that case? L'shem Shlamim L'shem Pesach. What is that case? Says the Mishnah. If you started as a Shlamim and then you remember in the middle, oh yeah, it's not Shlamim, it's Pesach. Hasama L'shem Pesach Kasher. So that would imply that. What about the case where you started out thinking about the stock market and then you completed it thinking about the Pesach? That would be okay, right? But no, the Gemara doesn't like that either. Dilma, Shani Hasam, maybe that case is different. So you could say that at least he finished the Shechita thinking about the Pesach, right? So subconsciously, maybe, or in some way, the beginning is also considered as if he did it as a Pesach. That doesn't tell you about if he was specifically thinking the wrong thing when he started, and then he completed it thinking about the right thing. Inami, or another way you could reject this as a source. I did Tan Lishman, Shlo Lishman, Tan Nami Shlo Lishman, Lishman. Like maybe it's just using parallel language. But really, so in other words, don't be so particular about the language used in the end of the Mishnah. It's just mirroring the first half of the Mishnah, but really, really, that in that case, shalol lishma is the same as absence of, a wrong designation is the same as absence of designation. Elamiha. Maybe there's
But doesn't
another
it
source for
depend on
Rava.
the order? Because here it says, inami aidi tana lishma velo lishma, tana nami shelo lishma velishma. There's an order
No, there's
difference
two.
here.
No, yeah, there's two. There's two parts of the Mishnah, right? The Mishnah first says, what do we do with lishma v'shalol lishma? And then it says, what do we do with shalol lishma v'lishma? In other words, the order, right? Not the order of the phrases in the Mishnah, but the order of the actions that it's describing.
So yeah, isn't there a nafkamina between them? I mean, there is a difference, right? It seems like this goes back to a recurring theme in Gemara, we've seen before, where we go lefia sofa lefia hatkala, right? It does not appear
Right.
in recurring themes. What do we follow? The beginning or the end of a statement?
Okay. All right, true, but that's not the key point of our discussion here is not the how whether the Mishnah prioritizes one or the other, like the beginning or the end. The key point of our discussion is we're trying to find some case where um, where it appears that an absence of intention is not as bad as a wrong intention. So we haven't found one yet that is clear. Okay, you're right that there is a that's a separate discussion, which the Mishnah is engaged in, but that's not what we're trying to get out of the Mishnah. What we're trying to get out of the Mishnah, we're trying to find a source for Rava's assertion that absence of intention is better than wrong intention.
So, but we do within this, the Gemara is here at least phrasing it. It's a distinction between whether the absence or the wrong absent tension is at the beginning or is at the end of his action.
Right. So yes, so the Mishnah is actually dealing with that. But what we're saying is the Mishnah is actually dealing with wrong intentions. It's not addressing absence of intention. And we're looking for a case where
Oh,
absence of intention is considered better than wrong intention. So what we've shown so far is that we have these Mishnayos that deal with wrong intention, but they're specifically dealing with wrong intention. We're looking for something about absence of intention. That's what Rava was talking about. So what's
uh-huh.
Rava's source? Elameha, maybe it's from this other Mishnah. L'shem shisha dvarim hazevach nizbach. There are 6 things that have to be done lishma. Right? L'shem zevach, it has to be, you have to have intention that's for a sacrifice. L'shem zaveach, and for the owner, the person who is bringing the offering. L'shem Hashem, for God. L'shem ishim, for the fire of the mizbeach. L'shem reach, and that it will have the aroma of the burning sacrifice. L'shem nichoach, and for reach nichoach is like the smell itself is supposed to be pleasing to Hashem. So those are the 6 things that you have intention for. V'chasas v'asham l'shem chet, and also in the case of chasas and asham, it's to atone for the specific sin that you're trying to atone for. Amar B'Yossi, af mi shelo haya b'libo l'shem achas mikol. Even someone who didn't have in mind one of these things, kosher, it's still good. Shetnai beis because it's kind of a general, it's like a Tanai basing is something that's imposed, intention that is imposed by the court. Okay, so like you can imagine, like you're supposed to be thinking about all these 6 things when you bring the carbon, right? It's hard to keep 2 things in your mind at one time, never mind 6, right? So Rabbi Yossi is saying, no, if even if you're not thinking about one or more of these things, it's as if you were kind of it's part of the procedure, you might say. So Asnu Basin de lo lemon lishmo. In other words, the Basin established that not to the Basin established don't say, like, don't specifically say that it's for carbon X, for carbon type X, Dilma Asil Memar Shalishma, because what if you slip up? If you might say the wrong thing, you might get mixed up, say the wrong thing, and then what, you can't, the carbon doesn't count for you anymore. V'is al stam apostle. So by if that's the reason that you might say the wrong thing, so if you think that not saying anything, having an absence of intention is no good, would the in other words, by telling you not to say anything, isn't that just as bad? Right? If absence of intention is this is bad, just like the wrong intention. So the court hasn't done anything, right? By saying don't say the wrong thing, just don't say anything. Well, don't say anything is also bad, right? So that shows us that don't say anything is okay, right? Because otherwise the Tanai Basin would make no sense. Okay, so now we have that Rava had a source for saying that an absence of intention by a korban is okay, right?
So he
And
wants to
then
make this a general rule that the person, when he brings the carbon, shouldn't say anything, just in case he might make a mistake.
no, that would be foolish. Okay. Um, the Basin had a problem. The Basin said we don't want people to accidentally mess up, right? To mess up their korban, right? So let's tell them not to say anything, right? Because if they say the wrong thing, they're messing up their korban. Okay, what does that show you? That not saying anything is not messing up the korban, right? Not saying anything is okay.
So are they telling people, don't you bring a carbon, don't say anything, just in case
That's
you
right.
might.
Don't say anything.
Well, then, I
Exactly.
mean, so a person has to know why he's bringing the korban. He's chatas, shlamim, pesach, whatever it may be.
Right. Okay. But at the time, if you have an absence of intention, if you blank out, when it's actually being done, when then you've designated it properly. Everybody knows it's a chatas. It's uh, but at the time that you actually do the avoda, you're not thinking about it. So the previous designation helps you, right? Um, and the fact that they tell you just don't say the wrong thing means that saying nothing is okay.
2 weeks ago, you say you're going, I got to bring a korban chatas. You bring it,
Hmm.
and so then you don't say anything. You knew you were bringing 2 weeks ago, so you bring it to the basement. Oh, maybe I'm not sure. Don't say anything.
Well, you're introducing the I'm not sure, but yes, essentially you're right. Don't say anything. Hand it over to the Cohen and think about baseball.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I see, I see why but that's exactly what we're talking about, right? People do this all the time, right? How often are you in shul and you realize you finished Shemona Esrei and you didn't you don't remember what you said, right? Or you weren't thinking about it. You just did it by rote. Okay? People do this kind of thing all the time.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just me. I just didn't say you. Um, Okay, so we've satisfactorily demonstrated a Mishnah where it's clear that absence of intention is okay, even if bad intention is not okay. All right. And then Rava wanted to compare this to get, right? And pose a contradiction. So v'gabi get the sum of hustle minola. Where do you get? How do you know that that a get, if you do with the absence of intention, that's no good? Maybe this is the source. Over bashuk. You're walking around. You're walking in the marketplace. V'shama sofer makrin, and you hear a get being dictated to a sofer. Ish ploni gerosh ploni smimakom ploni, that Avram divorces Sarah from Chevron in Chevron. The Amar Zeshmi Zeshem Ishti. It's like, oh, well, my name is Avraham, my name is Sarah.
My
Um,
name, your wife's name, his wife's name.
my name is Avram, and my wife's name is Sarah. And guess what? I haven't told anybody, but I actually want to divorce her. Maybe I can get this get. It's all ready made for me. Puzzle Garshma. That's no good. It has to be written for the specific person. Um, So that maybe indicates that absence of intention for this particular couple is okay. Is not okay, right? Unlike the carbon. So Gemara says, no, that's not a good proof. Dilma could Rav Papa. The Rav Papa, hacha b'sofrin hasuyin lislami noskinan. Here we're talking about these guys are just practicing, right? This is a course in writing Gittin. They're clearly doing it just for practice purposes and not for l'shem Gittin and not to be actually used, right? So here, maybe the reason that you can't use it is this wasn't really written for a divorce. It was just written, to practice. But um, but if it was written without, if it was written, maybe if it was written for divorce, even without your divorce, without you specifically in mind, maybe that's okay. So there's no proof that absence of intent for a get is possible. We need another source. Elameha, maybe this is the source. Yes, or Alkane. Cost of Lagarish Ishta, if somebody specifically wrote a get to divorce his wife, Vindimlach, and he changed his mind. Mitzo ben Iro v'Amarlo, and then he has somebody else, his neighbor, who's got the same name, and the wife has the same name. Shmi kishimcha v'shem ishti kishem ishtacha. Okay, you're not going to use this perfectly good divorce. I'll use it, right? I also want to divorce my wife. Pastel garishbo, no good. That you can't use that. Um, so, so that implies um, that if the get was not written for you and your wife, it's no good. So Gemara says, no, not a good proof. Dilmashani hasam the intakle l'shem gerishim dahu. It was written, sure, it was written for the first guy's divorce, but once he changed his mind, it lost its status. So now it's as if it hadn't been written for divorce at all. Elamiha, maybe we'll use another proof. Yesral Kain, Yeshel Shteinashim Shishimosein Shavos. I'm Abraham, and I have two wives named, each one named Sarah. Kasta Lagarish is Agdola. I wrote a divorce for Sarah 1. Legarish Bosaktana. I can't change my mind and use it for Sarah 2. So that seems to prove that if it's a get written without not specifically for Sarah 2, it's no good for Sarah 2. So Gemara says, no, not necessarily. Again, once you've decided not to use it for Sarah 1, it's no longer considered a divorce bill in the first place. It's like been divorced from its purpose of divorce, if you will.
But isn't that what he's saying? The Dilma, well, how is the Dilma Shaniatim different? He's saying in the first case, the beginning, that he can't use it for the younger one. Now he's saying it's different. You
No,
can't use
but maybe the reason is that it's lost its status as a divorce. But still, but if you had a case where a get was written for divorce, but not for a specific person in mind, then you can use it. That's different than the case of I wrote this to divorce Sarah 1, but I'm now using it to divorce Sarah 2. That's not the same as the absence of intention altogether. Right?
Say that again, please. I
Okay,
didn't.
right. If I write the divorce for Sarah 1, and then I change my mind and I want to use it for Sarah 2, that is a different case than when I just wrote it without anyone in mind. Okay, if I wrote it, because in the case of the first one where I wrote it for A and use it for B, once I've decided not to use it for A, it's lost its status as something that's written for divorce, right? Because it was written for specifically for Sarah 1, and I'm not going to use it for Sarah 1. It's no longer considered to have been written for divorce at all.
Right.
You see, but a case where I wrote it without any intention, right? I mean, it's a little bit hard to understand. Like, well, did you write it, for maybe the general case we're looking for is, yeah, I have two wives, right? And I'm gonna write a divorce. I don't know for which one, whichever one I decide to divorce later on. So that's Rava is trying to find a source, or we're trying to find a source for Rava to rely on that's possible. How do I know that's possible? So far, we've only demonstrated that if I write it specifically for one and try to use it for another, that's possible. But if I write it not specifically for any person, just to use as a divorce for someone, then maybe that's okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so Elamiha, here's another possibility. Yisrael Cain, Amar Lavlar. If you said to the levelers of Sofer, Kasov, write the divorce, Eleza Sheretz Garish, write a divorce, and when I decide who I want to divorce, I'll use it. Puzzle Garishbo. You can't even use that one. So that seems to be something that's written not for any specific person, right? So maybe that seems to be like a great case of absence of intention, and still it's puzzle. So Dilmashani Hasam says maybe not. The Ein Brera, because we there's a debate throughout Shas whether where you can do something retroactively, whether you can sign intent retroactively. So this would be a case of brera, right? That like write the get now, and tomorrow I'll decide who it was for retroactively. Who was it written for? So maybe there's no maybe that's the problem, not the absence of intention, but the fact that you can't retroactively assign who it was for. Ela meha. Here's another possibility. Hakosev tofse gitin. If you're writing, so remember, there's in the get there is the kind of the form letter part and then the specifics, right? The toraf is the specifics: who, when, where, right? The tofes is the form letter part, right? The standard the standard verbiage. So if you write the tofa, if you're writing if you're just writing the standard part and leaving the name and date and place blank, so actually you can do that, but you have to leave a space for the husband's name, the wife's name, and a place for the witnesses to sign, and a place for the date. You also have to leave out the key clause, and you are now permitted to anyone having been divorced. That's like the essential. He's saying that's the essential part of the get. So from that, so why can't you write that in advance? Right? That indicates the fact that you have to write that specifically for the particular case, the particular man, woman, and place, time, etc. And you have to write the key clause, Harayat Muteris L'chol Adam, means that if you had written that in advance as a sum, with no intention for a particular person, that would be no good. Right. So Rabbi Yehuda's view here is that no, you have to have an intention. A lack of intention would make it puzzle. Okay, so that is a good demonstration of how Rava got to the contradiction between carbon and divorce. First, we demonstrated that the absence of intention on a carbon, it's okay, it's still like a valid carbon. And then we demonstrated that the absence of intention in the get is that makes the get puzzle, unlike the carbon. And then what I can't even remember anymore how Rava resolved it. Um, um, Yeah, that a carbon, at least it has the context, it was always going to be a carbon, right? So therefore, the absence of intention is not so bad. A get, like people, or a woman, or a marriage is not. You don't walk around thinking about that. This marriage is ultimately going to be dissolved. So that's the difference between carbon and get. Okay, we'll
It
stop here.
sounds like this phrase I heard years ago. Evidence of absence is not absence of evidence is not evidence of no. What's it?
Yeah,
Evidence
yeah, yeah.
evidence of
Absence of
absence
evidence is not
is not
evidence of
evidence of
absence, or something
absence.
like
No,
that.
absence evidence of absence is not absence of evidence is not evidence. No, evidence of
Yeah, it's
absence is
something.
not absence of evidence. That was Rumsfeld.
Oh
Donald
yeah.
Rumsfeld. He was famous for these sayings.
Okay. Okay. Um, so David will pick it up again tomorrow. Have a good
Oh,
day, everybody.
okay.